Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Multiverse Infinitum podcast, episode 11, I believe.
11
Actually,
already?
I think so, yeah.
It's fast.
And also, we got Who Knows podcast, so running simultaneously, having a great time. Really appreciate the support. Without further ado, we'll just roll right into it. Today's topic steampunk. What were you saying before we started rolling?
What would make a good steampunk style movie?
Yeah, what would be great?
I was lost after that.
Oh, you don't
I
know?
had it. I got ADHD. Yeah.
No way you forgot it.
I really forgot it.
Oh,
I'll think,
shit.
oh, no, Kings of New York. Gangs of New York.
Oh,
Wouldn't that be cool? Steampunk?
we'll get into it, but you could argue it already has some proto.
It does.
So I agree, though. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I know what you mean. The higher level to it.
Yeah. Like weaponry.
Fucking DiCaprio or Daniel Day Lewis with a fucking
Yes.
monocle.
Yes. Glow in the dark liquid powered knives or something.
Yeah, for sure. All right. As you can tell, my voice is a little hoarse. No worries. We're gonna make it happen. Let's start off. We got Wilson. We're gonna start off just with a quick definition. For those who are unfamiliar, like punk, like what is this? Rock music? Steampunk is a subgenre of science fiction which incorporates retrofuturistic technology and aesthetics inspired by, but not limited to, 19th century industrial steam powered machinery. Steampunk often works in set as a or is set in an alternative history of Victorian era, or as you know, I'm sure many of you in our American audience are familiar with, the American Wild West, where steam power remains in mainstream use, or in a fantasy world that simply employs steam power, which we'll get to later in the subgenres. However, limiting the genre to this definition is tricky, as it has evolved over the years into additional elements in other genres. Example, biopunk, science fiction focusing on biotechnology, the aesthetics, such as the Art Deco movement in the 1920s and 1930s, which inspired my favorite aesthetic in Bioshock,
Right.
in the time periods, especially when time travel is involved, which, like, The Time Machine is definitely a steampunk movie,
And some Jules Verne
right?
started that, didn't he?
So we'll get to that
Okay.
actually very next.
Oh,
Dang,
there we go. I'm on it.
he's an amazing co-host. The origins next, we have the lengthy history might help characterize it. Um, Jules Verne and H.G. Wells actually
Right.
were commonly cited as its earliest progenitors. Um, but there can even be arguments for Mary Shelley, right? Frankenstein,
Oh, yeah.
and which was also called the modern Prometheus at the time. So it's very interesting if you study Greek myth. But yeah, I mean, just as far as origins, like it wasn't coined until 1987 by this other dude that we'll get talking to about later. His name is K.W. Jeter,
Mhm.
and he actually used it kind of as a derogatory term, like these steampunks. How goths were also, it was like a derogatory, and
Right.
then they like wore it. They'll fuck it, we'll be
Right.
goth.
Right.
So that's pretty dope.
Did it start in comics or first or books or movies? I
Books.
books and then I mean the actual. Well, I guess it would have had the drawings and stuff too, and Jules Verne and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of the early classics were illustrated, but we were talking about last podcast those pulp novels.
Right.
So as science fiction grew as a genre in the late 40s and early
50s.
50s, this was definitely a popular subgenre, but the main explosion in theirs comes in waves was actually in the 1990s
Really.
and then the early 2000s. And then in 2013, there was an article that said steampunk is the next big thing. But we'll get to a lot more of that. I just want to talk about some of the elements of steampunk and its philosophy or its worldview. It features anachronistic, like anarchy. I don't know how to say this word, but you know what I'm saying. Technologies or retrofuturistic inventions as people in the 19th century would have envisioned them, which goes back to the retrofuturism, right? How did people in the past see what the future was going to be like? What did they think about? And as we get to the 60s, we get a different retrofuturism with the box robots and the Jetson type shit.
Mm-hmm.
I like how I'm being like formal and then I'm like,
Right.
all right. Steam is also a central element of steampunk. The technology featured in this universe is generally just as advanced as that of our modern world, but it uses steam as its energy source instead of electricity, gas, or oil. As a result, steampunk technology usually takes on a retro look reminiscent of the Industrial Revolution era because they're like, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right.
And although it's not mentioned here, don't let it confuse you that they don't use things like electricity or gases like kerosene or anything like that, because in most steampunk settings they still do. They
Uh,
just see the steam as like the superior thing.
right. Where is it?
So Tesla coils are a huge like featuring item or object in those.
That is steampunk too,
Yeah, those are
not a
steampunk.
different. Okay, because I know they usually like when they show illustrations, they have like green glowing liquid in the guns
Mm.
and stuff. Or is that all steampunk?
Yeah, so that is more of the alchemical roots.
Okay.
So that's very interesting. You're going into that. The math and science of the day was different, and I think the trajectory of that would be different if we perceived it through that steam, and also the anachronistic that knowledge and technology was open source and free reign, and there wasn't patents and there
Right.
wasn't education, and we all sit in rows. It's like, you want to learn some shit,
Everybody was just
go
doing it,
figure
huh?
it out. And then like, yeah, people just knew more. So that's that more alchemical element versus the scientific element that we have in our current history,
Gotcha.
which maybe we're living in the divergent, and that was the true timeline, and that's why we're fucking,
Right.
it's one of the canon timelines, and we're like, damn, we're in a divergent timeline.
Steampunk would have been a good time.
Which we'll get into the romanticization of it. So also, and I'm sure that you can attest to this, it's figured as a literary trope, which we've been going over a lot. But there's also DIY crafts and even mainstream fashion that is okay, buddy. It is
What?
attributed to it.
Oh
He's
boy.
all, you say fashion? Um, Besides its striking visual characteristics, it might also be considered a novel and popular way of doing history or like historical fiction. It's pretty popular, especially. I mean, we're in a post
Cause
2013 world where that article is saying it's the next big thing,
right.
and the third wave of explosion from KW Jeter's analysis. Um, so theoretically, steampunk's bigger than ever,
Yeah.
and practically, I should say.
Right. We should bring up that guy in the Medic Comic Con
Yeah,
and
I
his
saw
book.
his bookmark in Barnes and Noble the other day.
Did you?
Oh, nice! I know that guy.
Right on.
Yeah, shout out to the dude. If I know the article or if I know the author, I'll link it down
Yeah,
below.
we'll link
But
it for sure. I'll
I
find it.
forgot. He's really amazing, and yeah, he brings a lot of these elements together.
Yeah.
Um, which again, perfect segue into the next. It's like you read this or something. Uh, Everything from romance to espionage, from vampires to time lost wizards, from cowboys with gadgets to gravity defying sky pirates. Many different tropes have been able to find a niche underneath the steampunk umbrella, which that guy takes to the nth degree, especially with the historical fiction and figures such as Nikola Tesla, Roosevelt, you know,
Yeah.
even some of the post Victorian, post late 19th century, early 20th century figures, and puts them in with werewolves and vampires and
In Atlantis,
cowboys
even.
and Atlantis, yeah, and cool stuff like that,
Hmm.
timepieces and trains and
Yeah.
a lot of cool, yeah. So it's a great literary subgenre for a lot of those reasons. But some of the beliefs and themes that definitely creep up in properties of steampunk
Hmm.
are a commitment to self sufficiency and the creativity of the individual,
Right.
support of small and local business, respect of artisanship and traditional materials,
Right.
which I think is also having a larger resonance in the world right now,
Hmm.
when a big like chunk is they're trying to like take a lot of these things away
Right.
and break that down in the human spirit, and we're yearning for like, what if we had more self sufficiency?
Yeah,
What
we
if we had
wouldn't.
less intervenement? What if we
Hmm.
had more knowledge across the people and more support of the local business and traditional materials like wood and metals and things that last? I guess maybe not wood and metals, but things that are more.
Well,
Industrious.
plus, and it's all a bunch of recycling stuff too. A lot of
Right.
salvage,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of cool
And
because that's
the
you don't
fossil
want to promote
fuels
that.
more. Right. I mean, steam.
Well, I mean, you don't want to promote like it's all used stuff that they use too, like
Mm,
rods and pistons and
yeah.
gears. So that's
It's
kind
always
of
very makeshift and very
right.
use
It's
all the parts
whatever
of
is
the
there.
buffalo
Yeah. So they don't want that. Right now they're making. I mean, refrigerators only last like 2 years. You know.
on purpose.
Yeah, on purpose.
It's
There
odd.
was a treaty about that. That all the big corporations remember. They got together and signed a treaty about the light bulb. Is where it started.
Mm,
That they can only make them last so long. They test them, make
the
sure they
big
didn't last longer.
switch.
But there's a light bulb still running since 1903, I think.
Really
Yep, it's the Edison bulb. And they were a better setup too
fascinating.
if you've ever checked them out. If you guys ever get a chance to check out an Edison
Edison,
bulb, it's pretty cool.
which I guarantee he didn't
But
make.
exactly, I was gonna get to that too.
All right. Well, some popular books and recommendations. I guess this is post. This is as a literary analysis, so this is not any Jules Verne or H.G. Wells or any of that.
Hmm.
But The Anubis Gates by Tim Wells, Infernal Devices by K.W. Jeter, which it's kind of ironic. The guy that's making the analysis and stuff, he's like, all right, well, let me make a badass book about it. And there's some satire in it and too, and it's not traditional steampunk, but there's a lot of elements and critiques in there. And then Leviathan by Scott Westerfield, which is a series that each one is named after one of the huge demons. So the next one's like Behemoth, and they're basically massive airships.
Oh yeah, I love the whole airship thing. That's
Hmm.
awesome. What are they called? Dirigibles?
I don't know.
I think so. I think
I
that's
know
what they
there's
call them in the Mummy.
Zeppelins. Oh, The Mummy. We're going over popular movies right now. That's one I didn't put on here. The Mummy, legitness, legitness. We got League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh yeah,
We've got The Golden Compass.
yeah.
We've got Sucker Punch.
Sucker Punch.
Scott Snyder.
Don't know it.
Okay, I think you'd be really into it. It's pretty cool. It's how I got first into it. Not Scott Snyder. My apologies, DC fans. Zack Snyder. We got Wild Wild West,
Yeah.
right? So maybe a little controversial viewing now after Will Smith, but
What was that
up
game?
to you.
What was that
And then we
game you
got
guys were
Van
playing
Helsing.
that I wanted to check out?
Hmm.
Is that going to the same category?
What game?
That game you guys with the figurines. Remember with the airships and all that stuff?
With the airships?
Yeah, the
Oh,
figures.
okay.
What was it?
So I was
Warhammer?
talking about, yeah, it's Warhammer, but it's Age of Sigmar, and it's with the Cadorian dwarves or something. I forgot what the dwarves are
But
named,
that's all
but
kind of.
that's Aetherpunk.
Oh, is it?
So it's a little different because it's it's still in similar styles, but things are more like gold instead of brass, and instead of dirty, they're kind of clean,
Okay.
and it's powered from Aether, not steam.
Gotcha.
Aetherpunk. But speaking of, again, a great segue to our final freaking.
Yeah. Fucking
It
three
is
for
what it
three.
is. Tree for tree. Subgenres. We got diesel punk, valve punk, cog punk, and my favorite as a D&D player and wanting to incorporate all different kinds of settings and elements, gaslight fantasy. So that is like I take you to like a village, right? We take like a traditional Germanic village setup, and then that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then
It's too bright. It don't work.
uh and then now they have kerosene lamps
Mm-hmm.
and steam powered plows, and the guards have electric batons, and there's a sniper in the tower, and you're like, this, you know what I mean? This is a fantasy setting, but there's these weird elements.
They using like Tesla coils for protect or to guard the gates and stuff.
Probably,
Yeah, the fields.
for sure. So I mean, what are some other? That's kind of all I got in the script, but we can ramble for a little bit because I think steampunk has there's a lot to be said about it. There's just more examples we can bring
The
up. Treasure
cosplay,
Planet is a great one. Yeah, we could talk more about fashion
the cosplay.
and the cosplay, and there's even straight up communities. One thing I was reading during the research for this pod was um, in the U.S. there's quite a few cities that like participate in the aesthetic and
Nice.
have that as like kind of a main deal.
That would be
And then
awesome.
in France, there's full on sub communities as well as a theme park that's fully steampunk. And it's not just like, oh, you like wearing top hats and having gears. It's like that's part of it. The other part of it is it speaks to a deeper yearning in the human soul that is not being fulfilled in many Western modern countries, which is that of self-sufficiency,
Right.
of personal growth and development, and supporting of the local and small businesses, which a lot of these events and a lot of these fairs do that very thing. Like, why would I go and buy some bullshit that kind of looks cool when I can buy it from this chick who made it? It took her 80 hours, and
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 it's
she lives in
quality.
Seattle, and
Yeah.
I want to support her, and
Yes.
and we have the same kind of ideals, or the same, like,
Do you
I
remember?
think it's awesome.
Do you remember that stuff that I did? That was that wasteland stuff
Yeah.
with the boots and all that gear. That
Yeah.
was pretty fun.
Did you get really into any of the community with that?
No, I was just got on one of my ADHD hobbies.
I
Got
see.
it, killed it, and then was done. But in the meantime, I got a bunch of cool stuff.
Yeah, well, maybe you should sell it. That's another deal, is like the advent of Etsy and a lot of the subcultures that do
There's a
come
lot of
apart
stuff
from
there.
that,
Yes.
really blew up the steampunk community, and the demand for that kind of fashion and DIY stuff just to have.
A lot of the stuff they do isn't
Just to have
just,
the exposure.
it kind of is functional too. Like a lot of stuff they plan out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not functional for real, but like it makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a bunch of stuff glued on, you know, like the gears actually do something or levers do stuff.
Well, since we're into the speculative realm,
Okay.
I wonder what are some of the changes, like Fallout, for example. There's a divergence in the timeline.
Hmm.
So it's like our whole history is the same until this point, and this is kind of thing. I wonder where our divergence, which is, excuse me, a popular term used in fiction, especially like time traveling stuff and historical fiction. When was the divergence in our timeline, and where did we fuck up to not be able to be in this steampunk world? I have two words. It's a name, and I think that's the reason why we don't live in the steampunk world. But I want to hear your take first.
Tell me.
You don't want to say?
No, tell me.
I think without Thomas Edison, we would have something much closer to
Yeah.
steampunk, self-sufficient Nikola Tesla
Wireless
and
energy and all
yeah.
that shit, clean
Mm-hmm.
energy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And
And
J.P. Morgan too.
I think a lot of the skeptics and the pessimists would be like, well, if it wasn't Edison, it would have been somebody else. A lot of people did that.
No, right then it was two people. It was
It was a
Edison.
big,
It was AC or DC.
and he killed a freaking elephant.
It was AC or DC. And they went. I mean, DC didn't
Speaking
make
of
any sense.
ACDC, they're trying to shut this
Oh,
channel down off a
oh yeah,
copyright strike.
yeah.
Come on! What? We still
We'll
rock.
have
We
to
should
bring them
appreciate the
up.
support. If we need to, we'll start posting this bitch on Rumble.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, overlords. Go Google right now. Who fucking owns YouTube?
Oh
Google.
yeah.
Oh, who the fuck
Who
owns
owns
Google?
Google? Who
Ah,
owns Google?
look it up. Steampunk. No, we're not gonna do that on this one.
Oh, okay, no.
This isn't who knows. But think about it. So, anyways, any concluding thoughts? Anything else that you'd like to say? Any favorites? Either media or Treasure Planet is a good one. Atlantis, Lost City, that's a good one. Any of your favorite either objects or attire or inventions that just really stick out to you, really speak to you? Obviously, Tesla is
No,
really
we'll
cool, but
work into Tesla some other time,
for sure,
but
that's
that's
going to
a
be.
big one.
It won't be the super pod. We'll do the Tesla pod
No, I
first,
mean a
and then we'll
Tesla
work it
pod
into
would
the
be a big
super
one.
pod coming soon. Probably,
Pod's gonna be crazy though.
probably episode 33.
Oh, are you a Mason?
No, that's when Jesus died.
Symbolistic,
I mean, I definitely like symbols.
right?
Let it rock. That's why this is 11.
Who knows?
Well, yeah, That's how we rock. Click the like button, subscribe. Really appreciate it.
Suggestions, always
Put
suggestions.
suggestions, comments, what you'd like to see next.
Yeah, 'cause we'll talk about any fucking thing.
Um, and
Well,
but the multiverse is infinite. Adieu.
see ya.